There's a big side effect of awakening that I want to talk about. Actually, it's a side effect of pursuing awakening, a side effect of orienting toward awakening, a side effect of trying to do whatever is required to wake up. And simply stated, the side effect is that you will inevitably, to some degree, chase the idea of awakening, which will be false. It will be inaccurate. And the chasing of that idea is, in part, what's keeping you asleep. It's nothing special about the idea of awakening. It's pursuing ideas. It's pursuing mental constructs that feel like, oh, if I could finally get that, then I'd be happy. But the pursuer is backward extrapolated constantly by the pursuit. So there's inaccuracy in the way we think about awakening. And this is just a side effect that will always happen when we do this work. It's okay that it's there. You can still wake up. It's just not going to be in the way you think you're going to wake up. It's not going to give you what you think it's going to give you and so forth. I want to read a comment that I just read under one of my videos here, and this illustrates it. This is from Christina. I have failed as a person. Probably I should surrender. Surrender to what? To this, what I don't like. I also don't want to chase awakening anymore. No hope for a better future that never arrives when one day I wake up. I feel hopeless and life seems boring and not what I want. And if it's not boring, it's suffering. So to the conventional mind, to someone who's not interested in the stuff we talk about here, interested in the possibility of awakening, this is a really hopeless message. It's a very hopeless place to be. If you say this to somebody, if you say these sentences to somebody who's, we'll just say a muggle. Someone said this to me once, people who aren't interested in spirituality or whatever, like they're muggles. Anyway, if you were to say this to just an average person, many people would be not only upset by hearing it, but you would almost probably feel some of their rejection of you, and they would go into helping mode. They would want to tell you how to fix this problem that you're having, and this would come across as a major problem to many people. This comes across as you're a failure, right? That there's something really wrong going on. The reason I say all of that is I just want to contrast that to my perception of this kind of message, and I've heard this message many times. My perception of this message is rather the opposite. This is a very good thing when we talk about awakening. If you're interested in awakening, if you're interested in waking up, oriented to waking up, this is a very auspicious experience. I'm not trying to paint some rosy color over what you're experiencing. I know it's uncomfortable. I totally get it. I lived it. I understand. In fact, the whole of what you wrote here, that's what I mean by suffering, actually. That's what I mean by unsatisfactoriness, right? That you can't make life do what you want it to do. You know what makes you happy and unhappy, and yet somehow it just doesn't line up that way. Life doesn't work that way. And the more you seek, the more uncomfortable it gets, and the more you get up in your head and all of it, right? I get it. I totally get it. Now, what I want to say about this is, even though all of this is a side effect of the orientation to awakening, it's actually a good sign that there's some maturity in this opening. There's some maturity in this approach to awakening. Because often what happens is I'll meet people who are interested in awakening, but it's rather intellectual. And, I've said this many times, I'm sure you've heard me say it, but it's rather intellectual, and there's something almost whimsical about it. Almost like they don't really appreciate the gravity of what they're actually engaging. Again, this is why the first chapter of my book is nothing but warnings, because you're digging into something that's going to be more than you expect, and that's okay. But you should know that. Well, this message I just read, this is what it starts to feel like when it dawns on you that you've kind of opened up Pandora's box, and it's okay. This is where you have to go to wake up. You have to go off the map, and it's never comfortable to go off the map. And the mind will say all kinds of things. It'll say things that to the conventional mind would be quite scary, or it would just make it uncomfortable, because the conditioned mind, the traditionally healthy mind, the mind that is perfectly happy immersing itself in social conditioning all the time for its own identity, to that mind, instability, lack of orientation is really, really uncomfortable. It's not what it's looking for. It's looking for the opposite. Well, you will destabilize the conventional mind. I don't mean you'll go insane. I'm not talking about psychosis. I just mean the typical views of how you're oriented to life, the typical views of what's real and what's not real, and what's important and what's not important. They will start to feel rather transparent and not so real. And then you feel a kind of visceral discomfort with that often, right? Because you're going off the map. You're entering the unknown in a very real way. So yeah, this is okay. This is par for the course. Now, what I often try to convey to somebody who's gone to this place is that often what they will want to do is like give up, right? Well, now I might as well just give up. I don't care about awakening. I don't want to practice. I don't want to do anything anymore. I'm not going to go to retreats anymore. I'm not going to work with somebody who is pointing out, helping me kind of see into my own identity structure. I won't meditate, mindfulness practices, inquiry, whatever you're doing. It's kind of like, well, I don't want to do any of that anymore. So that is the ego coming in and sort of saving you, right, from all of this. That's more work than true surrender. True surrender is to see all of this being true, that you're not in control, and your own idea of awakening is an obstruction, or it's just inaccurate. Your own idea of anything that's going to make you happy and how it's going to make you happy has been inaccurate. It's failed you, right? This is dukkha, suffering. So once you see all that, it doesn't mean you should abandon the orientation to awakening, your heart's orientation. If anything, it means you should really take notice of what's happening now. That's not a thought. That's not a thought. That's not your story, right? Your story is a bunch of thoughts. So what is not your story? What is not a thought? That's to take notice of that. That's how I would orient somebody here. And if you're practicing, continue. If you're doing inquiry, continue, because now you have the opportunity to inquire beyond the story, because you're seeing that the story is completely unsatisfying. Even the story of I'm going to wake up, I'm going to have an awakening, and whatever I think that's going to give me. It's just a story. That's not what awakening actually is. It's what your mind wants it to be. So you can see past that now. Once you can see past that, inquiry is kind of supercharged. It's very powerful, right? So when you're in this space, it's probably just a matter of time. Might be a year, might be a few weeks, might be a day, who knows? But I don't recommend abandoning things like self-inquiry. Just be open to it functioning differently, because it is functioning differently now, right? When you sit, now you know you don't have to do anything. You can't do anything. You can't force anything. You can't force the hand of reality, because reality is just what it is. When you inquire now, you know what an open-ended question is. It means don't accept a thought answer. Notice the thoughts, but let them go. That's not what we're really orienting toward when we're inquiring, right? When you go to a retreat, let it just have you now. Let it take you, because you're not in control of that retreat anymore. Like in the past, you may have gone to retreats and fought the whole thing, right? Or stayed in your head or whatever. Now it's like, oh, there's nothing to do but let go now. Give yourself to the retreat. That's the point. So you're in a good place. This is very auspicious for awakening. Just don't believe the thoughts, and know that there is something that is beyond this paradigm of the way you perceive yourself in your life right now. And you can't know what it is ahead of time, because the reason we want to know ahead of time is we want to be in control. This isn't about control, because control is an illusion based on the separate self, the illusion of the separate self. And that separate self is so conditioned by misperceptions and trauma and all these things. So this is about really surrender. And this person said it in the beginning of their comment. It is about surrender. You don't have to know how to surrender. You're being shown what surrender actually is, right? Just orient to your own instinct, which isn't a bunch of thoughts or words or perceptions or fears or doubts or any of that. Yeah. And I've seen this, again, several times. People kind of come into this place where they're disillusioned, and then they're like, so yeah, I'm not interested anymore in awakening. I'm like, yeah, but this is good. Like, I'm telling you this, now you're interested in awakening, and you actually kind of sense what it is, even though you can't put it into words, right? You know it's what's going to take you beyond all this. And just go there. Let it take you there.